Let's hop into a time machine back to the year 2012. Obama wins a second term. Occupy Wall Street rages on. The world didn't end, which was very anticlimactic. Gangnam Style is the only song in existence, and the Wii U is going to be released in November. That's right, the Wii U will be 9 years old this year. Isn't that crazy? The Wii had been out for 6 years, and even though it was massively successful, it was starting to become clear that they had pretty much reached the limit of what they could achieve with the hardware, and especially now that the 360 and the PS3 had new price-dropped models and had already started gaining back a ton of lost ground, even getting their own motion control technology. The Wii, with its PS2 graphics and its super janky-ass motion controls, was starting to look much more like an overhyped, underpowered kiddie toy by comparison. And perhaps in some ways it always was. Don't get me wrong, the Wii did have some great games on it, but by this point the other consoles had plenty of great games too, and even third-party multi-plat game devs were now abandoning them because they didn't think it was worth the trouble of hacking their games to pieces to get it going on their crappy hardware. The competition was vicious, and the Wii was quickly becoming the grandma console, you know, the one that everyone's grandma has. I think in my case, I was tired of all the motion control gimmicks, especially with games where they could easily have achieved the exact same gameplay mechanics with a regular controller. Oh, Wii Motion Plus, Zelda? You can't do this on a regular controller, you say? Oh, what's that? It's Metal Gear Rising that did the exact same thing? Huh. Who'da thunk it? In my eyes, the motion controls became a major distraction for Nintendo. I felt like they were prioritizing the implementation of motion into their games before actually making them good, and even into the Wii U era, this was still a bit of an issue. Needless to say, my eyes were starting to wander. I was looking up gameplay videos of PlayStation and Xbox games to see what I was missing. I could not believe all the shit that I didn't get to play. Chiefly, screenshots from games like GTA 4 and MGS 4 just blew me away. To me, there was no way for games to get more technologically advanced than those two games. And there I was waggling my hands around like an idiot with these PS2 looking ass graphics and an endless stream of shovelware dog shit. The Wii, with its big install base and $1 million gimmick, kinda became the dumping ground for half-baked ideas whose only real novelty was the motion controls, with a few exceptions. And by the end of its lifetime, it amassed a library of 1,597 games, which makes it one of the biggest libraries of all the Nintendo systems, including the handhelds. But how many of those games are actually good? Off the top of my head, I don't know, like Mario Kart, Brawl, maybe Kirby, Mario Galaxy, Super Paper Mario, Metroid Prime Trilogy. Okay, it had a few. There's Twilight Princess, but that's also on GameCube, so you'd probably rather play it there. In retrospect, the majority of the time I spent with the Wii was using its backwards compatibility to play GameCube or the Virtual Console. As depressing as it might sound, the backwards compatibility is kinda what sold me on the Wii in the first place, and sure enough, that was chiefly what I ended up using it for once our GameCube stopped working. Then, along came the Wii U. For me, it was kind of a godsend, at least on paper. Now there's a Nintendo console powerful enough for third-party devs to put their games on, and despite what everyone says about its big-ass controller, at least it has a regular button layout, which means that they can start focusing on making games good again instead of making them motion control-y because they feel like it. And to some extent, that was the result. Motion controls were starting to become more of an optional thing as Nintendo realized that not everyone thinks using a broken-ass Wii remote to simulate a button press is a fun game mechanic. Mostly. Although the launch library was kinda weak sauce, it started to pick up some steam over its lifespan. Pikmin 3 was an excellent entry into the franchise with beautiful visuals and new mechanics that didn't destroy the formula. People loved Bayonetta 2 and are still dying for news about the third game. Mario 3D World is often considered one of the best Marios ever made. Color Splash. Mario Kart 8 is possibly the best game in the series. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is fun as shit. Smash 4, aka the one without Snake. Xenoblade, and to top it all off, Breath of the Wild as a send-off. You see, I believe that the best metric for determining the value of a game console is its library, and the Wii U library is, at least I think, a lot better than it often gets credit for. But ultimately, there were other factors at play here that torpedoed the Wii U, which were honestly kinda depressing at the time. And combined with me growing up and better understanding how the world works around that time, and the fact that there's some degree of life outside of video games as well, I look back at the Wii U era as a key moment in my evolution, not only as a gamer, but as a person in general. I wanted it to succeed, but that's not what ended up happening. The Wii U would go on to be largely a commercial failure, selling half as many as the GameCube, and it honestly really bummed me out. But then I started asking the question of why. Why did that make me sad, you know? Why did it matter so much? It's a fucking box with a couple good games on it. I still had my health. I still had games I could play either way. I think the Wii U was part of a larger chain reaction that would culminate into me reassessing what's important and what isn't, but we'll discuss that a little later. To understand why the Wii U didn't catch on, we gotta understand what it was that made the original Wii so wildly successful. The Wii was extremely approachable and easy to understand, to the point that even people who never played a video game before understood what it was. Real quick, let me show you some unedited gameplay footage from Borderlands 3.
I'm ready for a fight.
Now, if you've played this game yourself, you might have some idea of what you're looking at here. But if you show it to your mom, her brain is gonna turn into fucking soup and she'll probably never talk to you again. By comparison, your mom walks in and sees you swinging the Wii remote around, and then the little guy on the screen swings his golf club around, and mom goes, "Ooh, I get it. Can I play?" To the average consumer, the Wii was extremely intuitive, and I imagine it was kinda like the gateway drug for a lot of the gamers of today. Even the name was super easy, it's just Wii. It was a clean break from everything that preceded it and everything else that was out at the time. Every adult I knew constantly mixed up the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 3, and I didn't even attempt to explain Xbox versus Xbox 360. Even though it's extremely simple to us, people who aren't in that realm often just don't know. I wouldn't even dare to attempt explaining the lineage of Xbox consoles to my parents today. Xbox, Xbox 360, Xbox One, Xbox One X, Xbox One S, Xbox Series X, Xbox fucking Series S. It's like the Kingdom Hearts of game consoles. Can't wait till 2027 when we have Xbox Series S Echoes of an Elusive Age Birth by Sleep Definitive Edition XI1V. I don't know where I'm going with this. The point is that among these messes of numbers and letters and subtitles and prefixes and whatnot, there was the Wii. No number of bits, no cubes, no prefixes, no suffixes, no excessive syllables, one syllable, one word, 3 letters, fucking Wii. The fucking Wii was not so much about hardware. The station and the box were all about graphics. They were supercomputers ushering a new era of graphical technology called high definition, aka Jesus Christ, that looks terrible. PS3 and Xbox 360 were pushing super high polygon counts and super detailed lighting and hyper violent FPS games and shit, and the Wii pretty much had none of that. Well, they did port some Call of Duty games to the Wii, but really, who wants to play COD on a Wii? Instead, the Wii is about as powerful as like 2 GameCubes duct taped together. It didn't have any of those fancy high polygon counts or HD resolutions, and where you had to be some kind of Alan Turing level Da Vinci Code genius to tell the difference in graphics between the 360 and the PS3, the difference in graphical fidelity on the Wii versus its competitors was immediately noticeable from miles away. You look at these side-by-side comparisons and it was just abundantly clear that they are not even in the same league anymore. But that was what set them apart. Instead of confusing the layman with a bunch of numbers that you might not even understand the significance of, it was just a little white box that lets you go bowling. And it was cheaper too, none of that $599 US crap. It was easy to understand and it was accessible to people who didn't know fuck all about video games, and it was incredibly affordable, and this combination of factors made it wildly successful. Motion controls were very approachable for those who were intimidated by buttons. Everybody who has played Mario Kart with enough people has seen some fucking scrub turn the controller around while playing, thinking it'll make them turn harder even though it doesn't, so Nintendo goes, alright, but what if it did? Bam, Mario Kart Wii. Now turning the controller actually does turn the cart.
How easy is it to drive in the new Mario Kart Wii game? And Jed says, get behind the wheel!
What's that? Open-ended 3D Marios are too confusing for people? Bam. Mario Galaxy, super linear, super streamlined, holds your hand, best Mario of all time. What's this? Can't do action commands or simple arithmetic? Bam. Super Paper Mario, now it's just a platformer. Now do you see what's happening? Nintendo was lowering the bar for entry to everyone, with a particular emphasis on people outside the gaming community. Games that were easy to understand and play for even the scrubbiest little bitches in the world. Now I'm sure a lot of you heard the last few sentences and detected a lot of negative boomerish gatekeepy subtext, and admittedly, yeah, that was kinda how I felt as these games were coming out. I was definitely a gatekeeper at the time. Even though I have since learned to like these games, and I have also learned to accept that not everybody is a super fucking elite 420 blaze it gamer man like me. I don't know, this part is unscripted. A whole new group of people were entering the realm that I had lived in my entire life. I'd been playing games since I first saw the blinding light of the hospital room I was born in, and I thought that would be cool, but what I found was that I couldn't really hold conversations with these guys. I hate to admit it, but I kinda figured that everyone was a casual except for me, which is a brilliant way to make friends, by the way. And also really fucking ironic, considering I had only really played on Nintendo consoles at the time. It seemed that everyone only wanted to talk about the new shit that I perceived as being watered down and simplified, and I was fed up that nobody cared about the old games that laid the foundation for everything they were looking at. And if any of that sounds familiar, the recurring rift in the Paper Mario fanbase is a very accurate representation of how I felt, except with respect to video games as a whole, and to this day I'm still trying to recover from that. I still get old man rage when people tell me Thousand Year Door is ruined by backtracking. I'll never understand that, but subjectivity rules the day. But what I had failed to see back then was that this was simply nothing more than the natural progression of the philosophy that Nintendo had already been operating on since it got into the video game market to begin with. This philosophy that gamers are not some elite exclusive club that only some chosen nerds are allowed to participate in. Video games are for everyone, and they always will be, and that was the Wii in a nutshell, a game system for everyone. Not just for me or for you, but for us. For we. Oh, that's why they called it that. To say that the Wii U, by comparison, was a very confusing concept for people would be an understatement. I knew what the Wii U was because I was all up on the news and I saw that fancy graphics demo with the bird in the water at E3 2011. But at its most baseline fundamental level, the console was not as intuitive or easy to grasp for many as the Wii was. It was a game console that had a wireless controller with a screen that you could put the gameplay on, and it could move anywhere, which makes it sound like a portable console, except it's not a portable console because the gamepad is not the console. The controller is a tablet with buttons and a screen communicating wirelessly with a regular game console, so you can play it on a portable screen, but only as long as you're within 30 feet of the stationary game console that has to be plugged into a wall socket to play the game and stream it to the gamepad. And also, every console can only have one of these controllers because they were never sold on their own, as far as I know. So when playing multiplayer games, one person gets the gamepad and everyone else just has a basic bitch controller, and it has a shorter battery life than the 3DS. Huh? Needless to say, a lot of people just didn't understand what this thing was, and the advertisements didn't really help either. I remember this commercial showing Wii Sports Golf, and it was the exact same game on the Wii, except this time you can put the gamepad on the floor and you can see the golf ball on the ground like you would on an actual golf course, and then it's also called the Wii U. So, what, is it an add-on for the Wii? Like, what is happening here? I'm confused. Let me reiterate that I understood what it was because I did my research. I already cared a lot about video games, so naturally I was doing my homework, which not everyone wants to do or has the time. Meanwhile, Nintendo suggested that the Wii U was designed from a desire to bring core gamers back to their side after the Wii basically solidified them as the casual platform. I remember that because I had this shitty assignment in high school business class where I had to design an edgy new logo for Nintendo to better represent this new direction. I got a B. Bringing back core gamers actually seemed like a really cool idea, at least to me, and it was one of the reasons I wanted the Wii U to succeed. As cringy as it sounds, I absolutely considered myself a core gamer, whereas today I would consider myself a fat man riddled with undiagnosed psychiatric disorders, but at the time, I was thinking, finally, a Nintendo system for me. Frankly, I didn't know exactly what I expected with that news. I didn't know if I would see a Zelda game with sex and violence in it, or if I would finally hear Mario say fuck, or if Fox McCloud would say the N-word or something. So imagine how perplexing it was when they started dropping the Wii U commercials and they looked like this.
As an inkling, you get to be a totally rad humanoid and a totally mad squid. This is my squid dance.
Needless to say, I don't think this did really anything to bring the core audience back. I think they already felt right at home on the box and the station, so from a business perspective, I guess that was a pretty misguided move, especially with Nintendo's long history of being the family-friendly platform. For decades, Nintendo had carved out their own section of the gaming market by being the only console with family friendliness and casual audiences at the forefront as compared to the other machines which were marketing themselves to the people who put core gamer in their CV. On a technical level, the Wii U coexisted with the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. This allowed Nintendo to win back some third-party support with games getting ported to their system again that otherwise would have skipped the Wii because it was technologically infeasible to port them there. From what I remember hearing at the time, it was technically a bit more powerful than those systems, which would have made it the most powerful console on the market for a very brief period of time. But remember, around this time, developers were already approaching the limit of what could be done on those consoles to begin with, so for the Wii U to be impressive, it really would have needed to be on another tier, and it just wasn't at all. Too little too late was the term that got thrown around a bunch, and that was honestly pretty accurate. And to make matters worse, this was very new hardware with a very small install base, meaning there probably wasn't much priority given to the Wii U versions of games, meaning that even when they did get made, they often got the short end of the stick. I remember Assassin's Creed 3 had all these performance drops that didn't exist or were at least not nearly as drastic on other platforms, and there were many other such cases as well. Remember, game developers were already approaching the limit of what they could achieve on those other platforms around this time, so for a console that was largely on par with those other platforms to come out at this time was very awkward. And of course, a ton of third-party developers still chose to skip Nintendo altogether. I think the core gamers that Nintendo was trying to win back had already figured out at this point that the next PlayStation and Xbox would be on their way soon enough, and the Wii U would be therefore left in the dust. And lo and behold, 2013 rolls around, PS4 and Xbox One. Two machines that are so powerful that they can almost run Borderlands 2 at 1080p at 60 FPS. In barely a year, Nintendo was already back where they started. And this time, they didn't have the power of clear marketing or intuitive, easy to understand ideas, and I was getting older and more cynical. I was realizing that there was no magic in the world, and Mario would never be real, and I would very likely never find love or success or experience any of the beautiful things in life, and that Nintendo did not owe me anything in spite of my Aspergic obsession with their products. I was getting depressed with life itself, and in the center of it all was this very mediocre game console with maybe a couple games I liked and a bunch of horribly optimized third-party software. It truly was a reality check. It brought me back down to earth and reminded me that these really were just products at the end of the day. Up until this point in my life, I had thought Nintendo was the king. I was just like the people who hop up and down yelling some shit about being grateful to the corporation taking my money in exchange for goods and services, even when they're not necessarily that good or serviceable. I got into embarrassing yelling matches with other kids who talk shit on Nintendo. I said 5 Hail Miyamotos every time I touched a Sony product. I worshipped Mario at an altar for an hour every Sunday, and on the 13th of September every year, I even fasted for the entire day out of respect to the original Super Mario Bros. I made those last ones up, but this extreme hyperbole should give you some idea of just how big of a Nintendo fan I was. And after growing frustrated with the Wii, immediately followed by the disappointment of the Wii U, that was kinda the straw that broke the camel's back. I was no longer a Nintendo worshipper, and that was honestly a good thing. In retrospect, it was a big part of growing up. Idolizing and worshipping corporations is a very unhealthy practice. I worshipped a company for years, and for what? What did I even think I was gonna get? A fucking ticket to the Mushroom Kingdom of Heaven? Or that Mario would be real and give me the key to the city? Or that Nintendo would bless my mortal soul? Well, it turns out, no. No. I was blessed with a mediocre game console with a launch library that took years to get interesting, and I slowly started putting the pieces together and realized that perhaps Nintendo isn't the most important thing in the world, and that maybe basing an entire personality around how much I loved a very specific video game manufacturer wasn't the best idea in the world either, and that maybe I should worship a gay spider instead. I didn't even know what I was thinking. I was defining myself entirely by my dedication to a logo attached to some products I happen to enjoy, and I guess watching Nintendo flail around like this was a wake-up call. Don't get me wrong, Nintendo still drops a banger here and there, and by all means, I'm not gonna stop you from buying things that you need or want because this is a capitalist society and that's how it works. But maybe having a cultish obedience to corporate entities is not the way to go. You don't have to support and defend every decision of any company or person for that matter just because you like some of their shit. And once I got over my Nintendo worship, I started to branch out and discover other games on other platforms that I may never have gotten to experience otherwise. And even better, I discovered things other than video games entirely. I realized I really like making videos, I liked having friends, I liked writing and acting, I liked voice acting, I liked men, dude. It was groundbreaking, but I also realized that I took myself way too fucking seriously as a gamer. I mean, I still like video games, but perhaps I shouldn't have let that become my entire identity either. And I should have thought of it as a good thing that new people were getting into games when the Wii came out. That being said, I think the Wii U is important, not only because it made me grow as a person, but also reminded Nintendo of their place in the industry. Is Nintendo worship worthy now? No. They never were to begin with. But I think the Wii U taught them some important lessons. Nintendo is the platform for everyone, including casuals. They are not the platform for core gamers, and they don't have to be. But they also learned the power of clearer marketing. Everyone knows what the Switch is. Like with the Wii, the name is a clean break, and it does a good job of explaining what it actually is. It's in the name. It switches between being a portable console and a regular one on a dime. It was everything people thought the Wii U was, except instead of not being that, it was being that because it was that. But if there's one thing the Wii U had that the Switch doesn't, it's the first two Mother games on the eShop, which was discontinued, so fucking rip. The moral of the story is basically that your most trusted brands have always been and will always be fallible, and no company is worthy of worship. Especially companies that release underwhelming game consoles and refuse to localize their best games, and that you shouldn't put all your eggs in one multi-billion-dollar basket. If you've been watching me for a while, I know you're probably sick of hearing me rip on Nintendo, and that's fine. With this video, I just wanted to take you back to the past to talk about the shitty Wii U that sucked ass. It's a stroll down memory lane back to a more confused time that the Wii U happened to be a part of, for better or worse. And as I said, both me as a person and Nintendo as a company ended up better off on the other side of it. Hello cousins, it's me still. I just wanted to take this opportunity to do an actual verbal thank you to you guys for watching this video, but also just for continued support. This is not scripted at all, but this particular video was extremely taxing for technical reasons. There were a lot of technical problems. I won't give super specifics, but just know that Da Vinci was being a little fucking bitch at the time. But I want to thank you for watching this because that makes it worth it in the end. So, yeah, thank you very much for making it this far. Also, you may know that I have a Twitch now. I've used it literally once, but maybe I'll use it again one day, so feel free to follow that. And that's about it. Thank you very much.